In your introduction, Joe, you talked about this as a dream that both of you had. I was wondering if you could just tell us when the dream started, and also maybe tell us how that dream evolved to the film we saw tonight.
It started from, I think, 2004 in Tropical Malady.
You met in Cannes when that showed? You gave it a prize? You were in the jury, I think?
Yes.
And you wanted to work together since 2004?
Right, and then we did. In
Other ways, yeah.
Project Short and curate a film festival in Thailand together. Yeah. I'm just still in the movie, I'm sorry.
I think we all are.
It's always good to see the people. I just feel, when I was doing this in Thailand, it's different to test it in the theater, empty theater, and with the people. First time in Cannes, it make the movie different. Yeah.
But you both watched it with the audience tonight, right?
With this audience, yes.
Why don't I ask you what you experienced in this room then?
I don't know, you feel the energy. It's about being together. And that's the most important.
So, okay, you started, wanting to work together 17 years ago. How did that idea take you to Colombia? Because you've worked outside Thailand for your short and installation work, but you've never made a feature film outside Thailand. So maybe you can say a little bit about how you ended up in Colombia.
Well, I'm always interested in Latin American culture and also the Amazon. So when I was making Smears of Splendor, that's 2015, 14 and 15, the country was basically taken over by the military. And I felt really an urge to make a film after that, but I think I had to make a political one because it was really part of us. But I couldn't because it's too dangerous. And I feel like, okay, how about this dream? So in 2017, I had a chance to be in Cartagena Film Festival. That's the northern of Colombia. And they gave me a tribute, and on the award night, they had these clips of my past film, very well edited. And I feel very touched, and I feel like, oh, this is like my funeral. I feel like, oh, okay, I'm officially old. And it feels like the end of something, yeah. And since I'm in Colombia, near the Amazon, I say, okay, this might be a new chapter, of filmmaking practice. And I started to travel around Colombia for 3 months with different cities. And at that time, before that and during the travel, I was accompanied by this bang in my head. I found out later it's called exploding head syndrome. Nobody knows why, And it happened in the morning, early morning. It's like bang, and the sound like what Jessica tried to explain. So being in Colombia and talking to people, I started to say, why not integrate this into the experience of the journey? Yeah. And then I wrote to Tilda, hey, I think I found a place for our dream. And I think it's a place that is very expressive in the country. And for us, it's such a unique experience because there's many things that we don't know, and the idea of not knowing is very precious. It's just embrace that. Yeah. So,
because when we started talking about a sort of atmosphere, it was the atmosphere of being lost and being strangers. We knew very early that because Joe's most of Joe's work had been in Thailand, we didn't feel there was a way of infiltrating me into Thailand somehow. We couldn't find a way of catching that. And so we made a quite early agreement that we would find a place where we were both aliens. And it was a bit of a search around the world. But what we were also looking for was a place that offered this sort of reverberation of trauma, which is something that Joe's work has always explored in Thailand, and something that I've always really responded to, being Scot. And I think an early bond in terms of atmosphere, when we were thinking about what kind of atmosphere we wanted to find. And so Colombia offered that to us, aliens, this sort of familiar feeling of the ability to be lost there was very sort of welcoming.
How did that shape your process? Did it change your work process from what it usually is? Just the fact of being in alien surroundings, both of you?
Yes, totally. Because when I was making film in Thailand, I had my roots, I had my own memories, and I used those along with my actors' memories. But in Colombia, there's no root, and so I more like a sponge, absorbing memory, and I focus on hospitals actually, because I'm really comfortable in that space. I grew up in the hospital because my parents were doctors, and so I visit basically hospital and mental hospital around Colombia and listen to people and I don't know, and try to understand.
Did some of that make its way into the film?
No, maybe more like emotion part, but there are many things that all in the film are out of hospital, the experiences that I encountered, like the man who threw himself on the ground when he heard the tire explode, the bus, and he jumped down the ground and then he ran away very quickly. That I saw in my early day in Colombia, and also many things. The men and the families that hide under the bed at night when the guerrilla occupy the town, for example, and many other things.
Tilda, what about you? I mean, as an actor, and I should note that Tilda's been in 3 films this festival, and they could not be more different in terms of films. So you, in some ways, are always throwing yourself into very different environments, but some are more alien than others, I imagine. So I'm wondering what being, Joe's sort of fellow traveler on this adventure as well.
It's really my comfort zone of choice, I would say. This sense of being lost and not knowing what you're doing is a really sort of happy place for me. My happy place, we call it. And I think this, because what Joe does with his frame is he sets up this sort of free space, this sort of playground, into which, when you step, you're a combination of very, very free, but also very peaceful. And that's, that's a very, being a very idle person, that's a very kind of fruitful place for me to be. But also, talking of the fact that we were in Colombia and that we were both lost, that's incredibly productive. I mean, it really sharpens your ears, being lost. You have no plan. And even though there was a certain amount of rigorous planning in terms of what particular curlicues of journey we were going to go on, we had to fix certain things. In terms of the energy of the shots, we tried to keep ourselves very free and open, and every bird, every leaf of grass, every gust of wind was welcome. You know, there was no possibility of anything ever getting ruined by anything, because everything was welcome. And that's a really, speaking as a non-actor, as a move, you know, sort of breathing prop, that's a really, really fruitful arena to play in, because you're just moving in the... We talked a lot, Joe and I, about me moving as if I'm underwater. And that's really what it felt like. And also in terms of one's sense of sound. You know, when you're underwater, it's not that you can't hear anything. In fact, in a way, it's like something switches and you can hear really acutely all sorts of other things. It was really like that. It was like whenever I stepped into his frame, I was, you know, all sorts of things switched off and all sorts of things switched on. So it was beautiful.
Yes, we shot on 35mm film, so I like to let it run to the whole film, and that's 14 minutes. You know. So the actors have to be really present, you know, because it's and not about memorizing the line, but about interacting, you know, with the space, you know, at that moment. And Tilda agreed in the beginning that we're not going to talk about character, we're not going to talk about the background. You know, I don't know, like how long Jessica was in Colombia, or how long her husband passed away, or those information. So this being, you know, just be there, you know, and we try to shoot chronologically. So because I didn't know what I wanted, I just said, yeah, let's try. And then we rehearsed, and then when we shot it, you know, it's our DOP and the gaffer make it quite open set, so that's like you can walk around, very minimal lighting, yeah, so that the actor can be, yeah. And for the first take, and then you know, second take, oh, it's not right, you know, so Tilda and other people show me. Okay, this beat. So me, the whole thing is about the rhythm. Yeah, it's like breathing. It's like building this animal. You know. Yeah.
You both talked about sound and about listening, and I wondered, I think we need to maybe spend a little bit more time on that, given the importance of sound in this film. I mean, you know, I think people often say that sound is half of cinema, but I think rarely do you really get a sense of how. I think sound is so prominent in this film, and I wonder, maybe Joe, you can talk a little bit about your work with your sound collaborators, and that you worked with them for a long time. And Tilda, I wanted to hear you talk about that incredible scene that comes early on in the film, that I think, you know, is in the studio, that I think is a key in a way. It sort of conditions the audience to listen.
Yeah, it's based on this exploding head thing, and I was trying to get that.
Did you see a doctor when this happened, or was it?
It was not that.
Is there a doctor in the house?
It's not that.
No, but you seem comfortable in hospital.
I feel comfortable. I feel that it's not a sound, by the way. It's an idea of sound. You know, it's like, anyone had this symptom? See, it's okay, right? It's not, you're just lying there, listening in the morning. Came in the morning, and then to the point that you can control it. You know that when it's coming, when it's going, and so I try to work with my sound designer to achieve this sound. It's like really like in the film, you know, it's metallic, it's underwater.
So that scene is an accurate description, like what Jessica is trying to communicate.
Right, and we went through all this library, sound library, special effects. And of course we use, other than that, the live sound is very important to heighten it, to give you a sense of this awareness of life around. Yeah. And it remind me, or inspired also by during the trip in Colombia, talking to people about their experience. Like, 15, 20 years ago, it was more violent. And people, for example, if you're driving a car and then there's a bang, you just like don't know what is that from a gunshot or a tire explosion or fireworks or bomb. You don't know. You're just frozen, and you just anticipate. You anticipate and you listen.
So that you want to say, but also I'm also, the other thing I was going to ask you is as an actor on the set, sound and image are often decoupled in terms of the actual making of the film. It's an illusion that brings them together. So you were actually working with imagined sounds for much of this film.
The final scene was all imagined, quite properly, I think, in terms of the narrative, because it really is inside our heads. But the scene with the engineer, I particularly love it because I honestly believe there's something in that scene that's really about art. That's what artists do. We say, hey, there's something in my head, and I don't know if I can ever explain to you what it is, but I'm going to try. And we say, okay, I'm here for it. Tell me. And then you try, and then you go. It's not quite that. It sounds different in my head. Okay? It's that whole sense of the attempt to be articulate and the failure, the constant failure to be articulate, I love so much, and I believe is sort of our trade. And it's very precise, that scene. I love this moment when she says it probably sounds different in my head. Well, yeah. Welcome to our world. But the fact that he is so open and then produces these sort of off-the-peg industrial, body hit, stomach in hoodie things, and actually that's the route to find this unique, magical, mystical sound I particularly love. But so that was practical. In a way, those two scenes, they are kind of bookends. That's very, very practical, very, stomach hit in hoodie, customized. But then the last scene really was something that we knew we were going to. That was the target. The whole arrow of the film was going towards. And we knew that when we got there, there was going to be no sound in the room. And so we talked a lot about beforehand what those sounds might be. And as we were shooting, there was a little bit of Joey whispering. But it was really a sort of kinetic dance between Elkin, who plays Henan, and I, as to what we were sort of do-it-yourself telepathy, trying to figure out what you might be hearing, and of course, when there was no wind in the trees outside, that's the time to listen for the rain, which you're not going to be able to see. It was an interesting piece of sort of forensic mathematics, but it was that was the target we were always going for, that scene, and whatever had been gathered throughout the whole of the rest of the film was going to somehow land there, because to all intents and purposes, this is a mystery film. It starts in the first frame with this question mark. What is this sound? And we knew that at the very end, very, very end, we were going to maybe provide an answer to that.